show you how sick I am immediately by making a nest up here. My name is Robin Vernon. That's your cue. I'm a very grateful recovering member of the Worldwide Fellowship of Al-Anon. Are we good, Dave? I'm going to move that down a little bit so I can see you all. Now are we still good? Okay, all right. Let me look at you for a second here. Good-looking crew. Good-looking group. Thanks for coming. Appreciate you coming. How many members of AA do we have here today? Oh. I'm honored. I'm honored. It's always an honor and a privilege to be asked, but I'm especially honored when the members of Alcoholics Anonymous take the time to show up at an Al-Anon speaker. It's not always the case, so thank you. Thank you. Also, while we're saying thank you for my program. I'm real clear on where my program comes from, so thank you. I want to thank the committee. Candy originally contacted me and left a great little, I'm calling mine a God box. Kent called his a basket, and it might be, but mine's a God box. And it had some really neat stuff, including things that she handmade, which makes it extra special. Thank you. And then my co-hosts, Tana and Anita. Thank you. Anita's a great driver. Picked me up at the airport. Always grateful for someone that can drive to pick you up at the airport. It's not always the case. Anita and I are sisters of another mother, I think, which is really concerning her. But we're a lot alike. And I told her she should be concerned by that. But I've been made very welcome and very comfortable, and I'm grateful for that. A thank you to Kent last night. I don't see Kent, but Kent. Wow, what a kickoff. What a kickoff. Oh, just touched my heart. And May 17th is my birthday, by the way, so I thought that was really cool. His sobriety date is May 17th of 1992, I believe, wasn't it? Yes, which is my birthday, so that made me happy when he said that. It was a great talk last night, and he said a lot of things that I could really relate to. That was the thing that most struck me when I first got to Al-Anon and started opening up my mind and my ears a little bit, was how much like the alcoholic I really am. My disease is a lot like the alcoholic's disease in many ways. I love the theme, Celebrate the Miracle. I love it. I'll tell you up front, I can't tell the difference between a tragedy and a miracle. It's a tragedy that I married an alcoholic. I'll tell you that. It was a tragedy that I had to come to Al-Anon with my tail between my legs, unable to control him. That's the miracle. Who knew? Who knew? When Lois Wilson, co-founder of Al-Anon, was asked what she did in the moment of silence before the meeting, she said she invited the God of her understanding to the meeting. So I'm going to ask for just a brief moment of silence, and I'm going to ask each of you to please invite the God of your understanding to the meeting. Thank you. Amen. Thank you. All right, my home group is a Summit Al-Anon family group in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. And it's been my home group from the very beginning. It is not the best group in the world. It is the best for me. I heard a speaker say one time, if you don't believe your group is the very best group in the whole wide world, please stay there. Don't go screw anybody else's up. I got that. Because I had questions about exactly how well they were doing things when I got there. One of my character defects is knowing best, and it's a broad range of things I know best on, not just the alcoholic, but I know best on a lot of things. Thank goodness I'm recovering a little bit from that. I do not come from a home that had active alcoholism in it. My mom and dad were teetotalers. Some of you all may not know, but I will let you know right now, drinking is a sin. Okay? And so it didn't happen in my house. I had no idea when I came here, though, that my mother and father each had an alcoholic in their family of origin. So they were affected by the disease of alcoholism. Therefore, I was affected at birth. Okay, so I was affected by the disease long before I laid eyes on the alcoholic that qualified me to be here originally, who was my husband. I suffer from what I call the isms of alcoholism. For me, that stands for internal spiritual malady. I just didn't know how to function in the world. Didn't know how to function in any part of it. And a big part of that was a spiritual problem. I want to tell you pretty much about our first date. I met David in junior high school. We were in the same block class, and he was in trouble just as much as I was. One of the effects, some of the isms for me were rebelliousness. I rebelled against authority as long as I can remember. If you told me not to do something, I just couldn't wait to try it. That's just the way my brain works. I don't know. I've never been a rule follower. I've always been a rule breaker. I'm a little better there too, but not well. I'm not well. I'm not standing up here today because I'm well. I'm here because I'm willing to come and share, and that's part of my recovery. So I knew David. We saw a lot of each other, not just in block class, but in the principal's office. So, but we didn't have our first date until we were juniors in high school. Okay, and he asked me out to a party. And I'll tell you, we had a good time at the party. I thought we had a good time. And then we were on the way home. It's only a couple miles to my house. He scared me to death driving me home. Well, but we got home in the driveway. He asked me out for the next day. Okay, and I said yes. So there's your first inkling that perhaps I might be set up for this thing. Okay. He'd already scared me to death getting home. Immediately upon getting there, my heartbeat slowing a bit, he asked me out for the next day, and I accepted. Turns out he was in a blackout driving me home, so he didn't remember asking me out for a second date either. So he stood me up on our second date. He called me the next afternoon, and I blessed him out and hung up on him. 15 minutes later, doorbell rang. Guess who? And he said, "Would you like to go to Tanglewood?" And I said, "Yeah, let's go." David and I did not fall in love. We fell in sick. Our illnesses really attracted us to one another. I believe I was just programmed to love an alcoholic. Just the isms attract me to alcoholics. So that began our journey together. We did a lot of partying together. I've done a lot of drinking. I've done a lot of drugs. It's part of my story. I've danced with you all on the other side of the hall. I never did it nearly as well as you did. I could never do the hair of the dog that bit you thing. I have done a lot of the things I hear you talk about in your talks. But I just don't have the allergy. And it's a blessing, I'll tell you that. I've learned since I came in Al-Anon that terminal alcoholism runs rampant back through my extended family on both sides. And so it's only by the grace of a higher power that I call God that I do not have the allergy. I don't know if I could have survived the allergy, honestly. But I don't. But we partied a lot together, and I think that's one reason why it was so angry when I began to try to control this thing, because he could not do it like I did it. Absolutely couldn't do it like I did it, and I didn't understand it. I didn't know why. I was ignorant about the disease of alcoholism. I thought he drank at me. I didn't know a thing. I was ignorant. We were married at 23. And all the things happened for the next 5 years. That may have happened in your house, maybe not. But, I don't need to tell you a lot about it. But bottom line is we were separated at 29. And what happened, he had worked for years to get on at R.J. Reynolds, which was the place to work in Winston-Salem at that time. And then he walked out on that job in his disease. And he actually pretended to go to work for 2 weeks, third shift. So I had no clue that he'd walked out on his job. And I didn't find out for a couple of weeks. But regardless, what I did was detach with anger. I did not know anything about detachment. I don't remember ever hearing the word. But basically, I kicked him out of the house and changed the locks. For any newcomers here, I am not recommending that. Okay, that's not the way to do it. But that's the way I did it. I was extremely angry. The first time I remember trying to control his drinking was saying, let's just drink on weekends. And of course he said, okay. And I found out that he'd leave his cooler a couple doors up at Marty's house on the way in and pick it up on the way out. There were, I'm sure he had stashes around the house that I wasn't aware of. But he never could drink like I drank. And that's the thing that is consistently the problem for me. I could not control it. So we were separated at 29, and it wasn't long after that, just a matter of a couple of months, he ran through all his friends and ended up with his family and did all the things that he shouldn't have done around them. And the next thing you know, he called me from a treatment center. And I remember saying, well, what in the world are you doing in there? I was clueless. I really was clueless. And he said, Robin, I am exactly where I need to be. And I remember being shocked by that. So he was the first person to invite me to Al-Anon. And he said, they have a family program here. And it's called Al-Anon. I said, what do they do there? And he said, it's for friends and family members of alcoholics. They go there to recover, like we go to AA and recover. And I remember saying, recover what? In my opinion, there was nothing wrong with me but him. I had a drunk husband. That was the only problem that I had. And I played no part in that. So I thought the fixing was up to him. And if he would just get it together, stop drinking, then I wouldn't have any issues. So he had actually invited me to go to Al-Anon 9 years before I got here. And if I'd gone, I wouldn't have heard anything. I would have been way too early. I'm grateful that I got here when I was supposed to. We communicated during this period, and when I would see him or talk to him, I liked what I saw. I liked what I heard. He was different. He was very different. He came into that treatment center, and he got recovery. And he became an active member of Alcoholics Anonymous, and he started working the steps. He was sponsored. He was doing all the things that the program suggests, that the program requires to stay sober. And he was not the same man. And I liked it. So after a few years, we reconciled. We bought a new home together. We have something called the 3 C's. I did not cause it, I cannot control it, and I cannot cure it. And, when I first heard those when I came in, I remember thinking, well, I never thought I caused this thing. Now, I have proven to myself I cannot control it or cure it, but I never thought I caused it. But when I look back today on that new home, I remember thinking, I'm going to keep this home cleaner. I have a new job. I make more money. I'm going to cook meals every night. And the end of each one of those phrases was, and he won't have to drink. And he won't have to drink. So on a subconscious level, I did accept some responsibility for his drinking, and I wasn't even aware of it myself. So I learned that I didn't cause it, I cannot control it, I cannot cure it, but I had a 4th C, that I worked very hard at, and that was contribute. I contributed a lot to the disease in my household. Most of it with my mouth and my attitude. My disease is a disease of attitudes. And most of the time, I believe attitudes are contagious, and most of the time mine was not worth catching. I don't mind telling you. I remember hearing Sue D. the first time she talk about the little alcoholic came and 12-stepped her husband in at the door. He turned around, he pointed at her, and he said, "You're just as sick as he is." And he cannot stay sober coming home to an old idea. And David came home to an old idea every night for 7 years. 7 years. I remember saying to him, "Why are you still going to those meetings? Why are you still hanging around with those people? You hadn't had a drink in over 5 years." Pure ignorance. Absolutely ignorant. I had no idea that his very life depended on him going to those meetings. So he injured his back 7 years in. He injured his back and went to his family doctor, and he hooked him up in the best way or the worst way, depending on how you want to look at it. I came home from work, and he was in a blackout. And that started 18 months of the worst insanity I've ever lived in. And I was about 90% of that. My disease kicked in the worst way. Just a little bit to qualify myself. I did a lot of search and find. There was a duffel bag in the basement. It was his duffel bag, but I knew a lot more about what was in it than he did, because I searched it every day at least once. And he would always hide this stuff in that duffel bag. I never really understood that. But I had 3 goals. I would get whatever was in there. I would take it to him. And the first thing was, "Gotcha. Don't think for 1 second that you're getting anything over on me, buddy." The second goal was to make him tell the truth. Now, you know how we can tell if an alcoholic's lying? His lips are moving. Yeah. Now, you know, what I know today, though, really, is when it's active, that disease will go to any lengths to protect itself. His disease would not allow him to tell the truth. It was doing whatever it needed to do to protect itself. And then the third goal, I just wanted to say what I wanted to hear, and that was, "Oh, honey, I'm sorry. I won't do it again." I heard a speaker say one time, the alcoholic never hears anything that the Al-Anon says. And, you know, this is what we do right here, blah, 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 blah. The alcoholic never hears anything that we say. They watch what we do. Well, what I was doing was the same thing over and over, expecting different results. And, of course, you know that's insanity. The Al-Anon doesn't pay any attention to what the alcoholic's doing. I just want him to say the right thing. And that is, "Honey, I won't do it again." And I would verbally abuse him until he did that. And we did that over and over and over, one day at a time, for years. For years. His doctor gave him a lot of mood-altering, mind-altering pharmaceuticals, which he kept in an unmarked bottle in his pocket. He mixed and matched and drank with that. It made him pretty crazy. So I decided I probably need to get in touch with the doctor. So I called the doctor, explained the situation, and he said, "Thank you so much for calling. I won't be giving him any more medication." Flush that down the toilet, a couple days, 3 or 4 days, there's another unmarked bottle with little pills in it. So I would call the doctor again, explain the situation. "Thank you so much for calling. I won't be giving him more pills." A few days later, pretty soon, his doctor didn't want to talk to me anymore. Can't imagine why. I remember very clearly writing the doctor a letter. Now, who do you think the doctor thought was insane in this equation? I am sure in his mind he was going, "Wow, if I was married to her, I would probably need something for my nerves too. I'd be having a little trouble sleeping at night, perhaps some muscle spasms." Yeah, it was I was much crazier than he was. Even active, he had 7 years of recovery. And so he just wouldn't respond. I would be going crazy, and he did nothing. And that made me even crazier because I was just doing everything I could to try to control it. Trying to control something I didn't know I couldn't control. I want to tell you just one more thing. I had started to have some physical symptoms myself. My first sponsor used to say, Al-Anons get parts taken out. I believe that my disease is just as terminal, can be just as terminal as alcoholism. And we get parts taken out. The stress that comes from not living in recovery from the isms of alcoholism will eventually kill me, a teaspoon at a time perhaps, but it will. Over a period of time, that kind of stress will kill me. So I'd started to have some physical symptoms. I was having some jaw pain. So I go to my dentist, and he checks my teeth. He said, I believe your teeth are fine, Robin. I don't see anything wrong today. Do you grind your teeth? I was like, no, I don't grind my teeth. So then my ear starts hurting a little bit on the same side. I go to my family doctor. He says, your ear looks fine, Robin. Do you grind your teeth? No, I do not grind my teeth. Back to the dentist. The dentist takes x-rays. He's like, Robin, there's nothing wrong with your teeth. Are you sure you don't? I was like, I do not grind my teeth. And I was walking around like this. I mean, I had suffered from something I call BTTT, bow tied too tight. And so he gave me some Klonopin. Some of you might be familiar with Klonopin. Now, this is how well I am. I did not take the Klonopin because that would have been admitting I have a problem of some kind other than a drunk husband. I did not take the Klonopin, but I put the bottle right beside David's shaving cream in the medicine cabinet. And I counted it every day, morning and evening, to be sure he wasn't taking it. And that, folks, is the ism of alcoholism. The distorted thinking, the insanity that allows me to perpetuate an illusion that I have any control at all over this. Admitted that we were powerless over alcohol. Admitted we were powerless over the alcoholic. And that our lives had become unmanageable. Nothing I ever did, nothing I ever said made any difference at all. As a matter of fact, I was giving him a get drunk free card every day. Using my mouth and my attitude to do it. So I contributed quite a bit to the disease. I ran out of good ideas. Thank goodness. If I'd had one more good idea, I wouldn't be standing here today. I'd be out there doing whatever that sick thing was. But I ran out of good ideas. I had a moment of clarity. The only reason I remember the date, because it was my daddy's birthday, January 29th of 1992. And I heard him at 6 a.m. that morning down in the birdseed trash can in the basement, 6 a.m. Now, he wasn't in the trash over here. He was back here in the birdseed. And I knew that he wasn't feeding the birds at 6 a.m. in the dark. But I didn't run down there. I didn't search and find. I did nothing. He passed out on the couch that afternoon, and then I went down to the birdseed, opened the lid, and there were a lot of little airplane-sized vodka bottles in there. I took one upstairs, sat down across the room from him, and very gently said his name to wake him. In the past, at 3 a.m., if I had searched the duffel bag, found something, he's asleep in the bed. He's coming out of that bed. I don't know where he's going to sleep, but I can tell you where he's not sleeping that night. But something was different. I was different. I believe it was a higher power I didn't even know yet, doing for me what I could not do for myself. And I gently woke him, and I held that bottle up, and I said, I can't do this anymore. If you want help, I'll go with you, and I'll support you. And we did. We went to an outpatient family program. I want to be real clear about why I went. I went, first of all, to be sure that he went. I went, second of all, to be sure he heard what he needed to hear. And I told him what that was every night on the way home. I remember every night on the way home, I would say, they put us all, first of all, they put all of the family members and all of the patients, the alcoholics, together in the same room for 4 hours the first 5 nights. It was a squirrely bunch. And I remember all the way home talking about him and them. Could you believe that she said, can you believe that he did? Can you believe that they... Talking about him and them, you know. And I've since learned I don't get any better talking about him and them. But that's what I was doing. The third night we were there, we were sitting there, and the same counselor was in there with us every night. And he said, turn to page 47 in your notebooks. And we had this notebook that they'd given us to follow along in. I very promptly and perfectly turned to page 47 in my notebook. And I looked over, and David was struggling. So I reached over and helped him find page 47 in his notebook. And I looked up, and that counselor was sitting right in front of me. He was staring directly at me. And the minute I saw the look on his face, I knew it was the exact same look that I had on my face all the way home, talking about him and them. And what that look said was, man, you're a sick one. And my mind opened just a crack. Just a crack. And a shaft of light came in. And I remember thinking, I don't believe I'm okay. I don't believe for one instant that it's a coincidence that they loaded us in a van and they took us to a meeting that night. They put me in a van and they took me to my first Al-Anon meeting. And it was at my home group, Summit Al-Anon Family Group, where I still go today. I fell into a nest of winners. I'm not sure I would have had the courage to go by myself. I'm really not. So I'm grateful. And I went in those rooms, and they were talking about the secrets that I'd been keeping for years. I was shocked that they were openly discussing how they felt about what was happening in their homes. And it was exactly what was happening in my home. And I immediately came home. I immediately fit there. I had not fit anywhere in years. Nowhere. I just didn't fit out there. I didn't fit anywhere. But I fit there. And I started following good, orderly direction for the very first time that I can remember. I had always rebelled, whether it was teacher, coach, Sunday school teacher. I never followed direction of any kind. I began following good, orderly direction in Al-Anon. And the first thing I got was hope, hope, hope. And hope became my tool belt. It became a belt that I choose to put on a daily basis. And I began picking up tools. And they said, get a sponsor. Get a sponsor. And I did. I got a sponsor. And she was a black belt Al-Anon, and I'm grateful for that. She'd been in the program 27 years, which I thought, gosh, she must really be bad off she's had to stay that long. But I figured she probably had learned a lot in that time frame too. I'll never forget the first suggestion she made to me. She said, now they don't tell you what to do, but they make very strong suggestions. And they word those in such a way that they just are almost telling you what to do. She said, Robin, it would be a good idea if you didn't say anything to him that was judging, accusing, or blaming. I was willing to go to any lengths. So I took that home. I held everything up to it. Is it judging? Is it accusing? Is it blaming? All communication on my part ceased. I had no idea. I had no idea that everything I had said to that man for years was judging him, accusing him, or blaming him. Everything that was wrong in my world was his fault. That's how distorted my thinking was. That's how large my resentment was, how much anger I had. because of ignorance, my ignorance about the disease. So I went back to her. I said, we've got a communication problem in our house. What can I say? And she said, you can say it if it's loving, true, and necessary. But it has to be all three. Well, I could certainly get true and necessary, but I could not pull off loving because I really wanted to kill him. I really did. I was extremely angry. That's the only emotion that I felt. That's the only emotion that I could feel was rage and anger. And I had a murderous heart. I really did. I didn't know how bad I was, honestly, until I'd been in recovery for a little while. And my mom and dad told me that their greatest fear had been for some time that I would take David's life and go to jail for the rest of my life. And I didn't know that was a real possibility because I had whiteouts. You know, he had blackouts. I had whiteouts. And a whiteout can be just about as scary as a blackout. I was dangerous. I really was. I learned to pick up the 500-pound phone. And I began this process of working the steps. I believe that the steps are not part of the program. I believe the steps are the program. That's it. That's it. I'm way too sick to get it through osmosis. I agree 100% about the chicken coop thing, Kent. I'm just too sick to get it through osmosis. Can't absorb it in these rooms. I don't think it would matter how long I came, how long I sat. My sponsor put me to work in the steps, and I feel like I'm of above average intelligence. I thought this shouldn't take too long. I worked through the first 4 steps, did the paperwork, just as she indicated, boom, 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 and it's very superficial. Don't mind telling you, but very necessary. I think everybody might decide to skip one. The one I was going to skip was 5. And so when I got my 4th step, I was working on my 4th step and pretty much had it done. And she'd say, how are you coming on that 4th step? Good. Coming along nicely. See, she was like a fairy princess. I was never, ever going to tell her everything about me. And I thought it would just be too much for her. You know, I had that terminal case of uniqueness, that grandiosity. So it'd be another week or two. She'd say, how's that 4th step come along? Good. Everything's coming along just fine. She didn't know that I had found this list of all these emotions. I didn't know what I felt. I was totally numbed out to anything but rage. I had this list of emotions, and I was going back. I was doing my first 4th step on the 7 most painful events. So I was going back to each event and cataloging every emotion I had, and I was going back how many times I'd had. If she'd have given me another month or so, I think I'd have had a multicolored graph for her, okay? However, she continued to ask me, and then I made the mistake of telling her the truth. She said, how are you coming on that 4th step? And I said, well, I'm just sort of stuck. And she said, well, maybe you need to process a little bit. Well, I had not heard that word. And I said, yeah, I think I do need to process. And she said, well, come over this Saturday for lunch. We'll have lunch and then we'll process. I said, okay. So I was over at her house that Saturday, and we were sitting at the lunch table having lunch, and the phone rang. She picked it up. It was another Al-Anon, and I heard her say, now I'm going to have the ringer turned off on the phone this afternoon because I'll be taking a 5th step. And I thought, now I wonder who's coming over to do a 5th step after I get done processing. She tricked me. She did. And the fact that woman that I'd only known for 3 months loved me enough to risk my relationship with her to trick me speaks volumes. I will always be grateful. Always. Because relapse happened not long after that. If I had not done that first, 4th, and 5th step, I believe the disease would have jerked me up and I'd be gone. And I don't know. I know I can have another slip. You know, I have a slip every day. For those of you that don't know it, we don't get chips in Al-Anon. That's because we have a slip every day. All we'd ever use is white ones, okay? I don't know if I'll ever have another recovery. You know, I can have another slip, but I don't know if I'll ever have another recovery. And I would imagine a lot of you have been here long enough to see a lot of people come and go. Perhaps a lot more come and go than have come and stayed. I believe that Al-Anon is hard to get to. Hard to get to. And it's pretty hard to stay sometimes. I can justify and rationalize a lot of inappropriate and unacceptable behavior from myself when I'm living with an active alcoholic. It doesn't make it okay, but in my mind, my distorted thinking, it did. I learned a lot about myself in that first 4 step. Things that I had accepted responsibility for that were not mine. Things that I would take absolutely no responsibility for that were 100% mine. And I was grateful. Relapse happened. And I just about didn't make it as it was after doing the first 5 steps. Very superficial, granted, but I think it's what saved me. And I'll never forget what she said when I told her that he was drinking again. And he was the worst I'd ever seen him. He was bad. She said, "Robin, you need to treat him like an honored guest in your home." I could not believe she said that. I mean, look what I've been doing. I'm going to 9 meetings a week. One of them an open AA speaker meeting. I'm doing all that I can do and more. I'm talking to you every day, multiple times. And look what he's doing. Again, all the focus on him. Score keeping. Anytime I keep score, I lose. So, I want to talk a little bit about the transfer I made on the steps. You know, I believe that it's 16, 18 inches from my head to my heart. And it's a heart program. It's not a head program. I can't work this program in my head. I can give lip service to it. I can talk the talk out of my head, but I can't walk the walk unless I make the transfer here to my heart. And I want to tell you about the first time I made the transfer on the first step was at that relapse. He was really bad, and I was having a hard time functioning. You know, David was a white-collar alcoholic. He never missed work. He would get drunk, and I would miss work. That's the way it worked in our house. Little Miss Perfect was barely employable, okay? I really did not function well in the active disease. It took every bit of energy I had controlling him or keeping the illusion going that I could. So my sponsor said, "The elevator's going down, Robin. Stop it on every floor. You can choose to step off anytime." And so I made that choice. And that choice was to leave my home for a period of a week. And I told him, I said, "I can't stay here while you're drinking. I'm going to leave. When I come back, if you're still drinking, then we're going to have to do what we need to do to make other arrangements." And I didn't do anything specific, but I'd already learned that you got to say what you mean and mean what you say, and don't be mean when you're saying it. And I knew that if I came back and he was still drinking, I was going to have to do something, but I didn't know what. I was just following good orderly direction. So as I was leaving my house, and let's get back to the first step. 5th step time. I had been giving him for 3, almost 4 months now. I had been giving him the number of an AA sponsor I had picked out for him. You see, his AA sponsor had a lake house that didn't even have a telephone. Well, I knew that you had to be able to get a hold of your sponsor day or night. We didn't all have cell phones then. So I was giving him the number of this AA sponsor I had picked out for him. It just happened to be my sponsor's husband. I know there was an ulterior motive, a little information exchange there. He would never make the call, never make the call, never make the call. So as I was leaving my home and he was in this relapse, I knew he was the worst I'd ever seen him. And I thought, he is at that bottom that I've heard him talking about. I'll give him that number one more time. So I wrote Ray's number down on a sticky note. I was standing right beside my car and I handed it to him. I said, here's Ray's number. Call him. He can help you. And I turned, took one step, got in the car and pulled out. Now, on the way over there, I was raging. I was extremely angry. It was about a 30-minute drive to my sponsor's house. And I was hot. And about halfway over, I looked down on the bottom of my shoe and there was that sticky note. And that's when I knew here in my heart, I'm not qualified to help him. I cannot help him. There's nothing I can do. I am powerless over that alcoholic. And I've got to do what I've got to do to be okay and to give him to God. Because I can't do this one more day. That sticky note was the first thing to go in my God box, and it's still there. That's the instant that I put down the magnifying glass and I picked up the mirror. And I took the focus off of him and I started looking at me. I came home at the end of that week and he was not drunk. I later found out that he had missed work in that 5 days and he was actually in a 5-day blackout. He had to go to work and ask somebody. He'd gone to work all but one day. He had to go to work and ask the guy in the office beside him, what did he do that week? And he wrote it down on a pad because he had no idea. Baffling, cunning, and powerful. I don't know how many times he drank in the next few months. I wasn't paying any attention. I had let go of him and I was trying to focus on me. I was doing the things that I needed to do to work through the rest of the steps and continue my journey. On November 22nd of 1993, I cooked dinner. I don't know how long it had been since I cooked a meal. A long time. When he was active, we never ate meals together. We didn't do anything together when he was active. We were like opposite magnets. And I'm too sick to spend extended periods of time around an active illness, even today. And I really had to stay away from him when he was drinking then. But I had cooked dinner that day. I had a meal on the table. David worked as a starter at a golf club so that he could play free. And he came home from the golf course clearly drunk. Clearly drunk. He came in, we sat down, we had a meal together. I have absolutely no idea what we talked about. But I can tell you what we didn't talk about. We did not talk about the fact that he'd been drinking. Now, in the past, my mouth was connected to the doorknob. So he would come in, and I would say something really intelligent like, "You've been drinking." And he would say, "I have not." And I would say, "David, I can always tell when you've been drinking. I've drunk enough with you. You've been drinking." And then it would be on. I'd be searching and finding. We really did say and do the same things over and over and over for years. And the results were always the same. I didn't say anything. I was standing at the sink doing the dishes. I was very much in my head. It was going round and round and round, but I had learned to pray, to ask to know when to speak up and when to shut up. And if it was time to speak up, that it be God's words. And he was sitting at the table with this deer in the headlights look, because I'm doing something different. That's weird. And it was time to speak up. And I turned from the sink, and all that came out of my mouth was, "I need to let you know that I'm uncomfortable with the way you are." And that's all that came out. And he started, our his part of our old tapes. Well, I've not been drinking. And I said, stop. I don't want to discuss it with you. I just need to let you know how I felt. And I finished the dishes, and I went and sat down. I had a meeting that night. It was Saturday. I had an 8 o'clock meeting. And in about 20 minutes, he came and sat down. And he said, I drank today. I've hurt you. I drank today. I've hurt you. So the very moment that I stopped trying to make him tell the truth, he sat down and he told the truth. Now, what happened for me was that the first time in all my selfishness and my self-centeredness, my martyrdom, I looked in his eyes and I saw how badly his drinking hurt him. In the past, it had always been about me. Look what he's doing to me. He drank at me. It was all about me. I will tell you, I don't know anything about the pain of the disease of alcoholism. I was blown away. And I told him, David, I love you and I want you to be okay, but I can't help you. You know where your help is. And I went to my meeting. I didn't know what happened for him until 2 years later. I went to an AA meeting, open AA meeting. He was the speaker. And I'll never forget what he said. He said, when I came home drunk on November 22nd of 1993, and my wife did not go crazy like she always had, I didn't have anything else to look at but me. And I did not like what I saw. That was his sobriety date. He picked up a white chip on November 22nd of 1993. Now, when I look back on that, I see myself standing with my hands on my hip, looking very intimidating. And I'm probably doing the Al-Anon handshake at him. And his higher power is standing behind me, tapping me on the shoulder, and he's saying, excuse me, that young man needs my help. And if you'll step aside and get out of the way, I'll help him. And I say, oh no, God, go help one that doesn't have somebody like me to help them. The biggest difference between me and God, He never thinks He's me. He does not get confused about that. That knowing best, that God-like attitude. You know, I'm better about it, but I can still have it today. I can still have it. As is the case sometime in recovery, it ended up that David and I, even though we were best friends and loved one another very dearly, that we really didn't need to be married. And so in 1999, we divorced in recovery. We treated one another like we wanted to be treated. We talked to one another like we want to be talked to. And we really did do it in recovery, and I'm very grateful for that. It was still something that was extremely painful. We were married for 19 years, but we remained very good friends. He was my best friend, and we loved one another very deeply. So I'm very, very grateful. Big Shot qualified me to be here. In 2009, he called me from another treatment center. He was a month short of 16 years. And that's when I really learned about baffling, cunning, and powerful. We would get together periodically and shoot pool. We would have dinner and then we would shoot pool. And we always had the best time. Laugh. Oh, my God, we would laugh. We'd fill the jukebox up with about $20 worth of quarters so we could play the old music before the headbangers got there, you know. The young people. And and we would have the most fun. But when I didn't hear from him for a period of time, I would know that he was back out. And I would love him from a distance. I had to love him from a distance. He called me one time drinking. He was drunk, and I said, David, I can't talk to you when you're drinking. Let's pray. And I prayed, and as I was hanging up the phone, I said, David, you're a good man, and you deserve the very best that God has to offer. I love you. I got to go. Bye. Click. You know, my greatest regret in my disease was the dignity that I robbed from him in my disease. You know, treating him less than, demeaning him and belittling him. That was my greatest regret. I treat him like an honored guest. Treat him like an honored guest. In September of 2011, he came by the house, and he had been ravaged by the disease. And I understood incomprehensible demoralization. I understood it. And he told me, I don't think I'll live through another relapse. And I said, David, you are a good man, and you deserve the very best that God has to offer. I don't want you to die. I love you. October 9th, 2011, we shared a daily reader called God Calling. God at Eventide. It was a good reading. I was working out of town, and I called him. He came to the phone, and he just cried. And I said, David, you're a good man, and you deserve the very best that God has to offer. I don't want you to die. I love you. And 4 days later, a dual member in my group called to let me know that David had died from the effects of terminal alcoholism. He had really good recovery. He helped a lot of people. A lot of people. I've had a lot of AA members come up to me and say, David Vernon saved my life. But he couldn't save himself. Now, the miracle in all that is that I had been able to place principles above personalities. You know, my disease would talk to me, and it would say, it would be okay for you to call him. It would be okay for you to drive by the house and check on him. But it wasn't okay, because I wasn't qualified to help him. And I would have been contributing. I treated him like an honored guest, and I took no more of his dignity. And my last words to him were, I love you. And that's as it should be. So today I have the most demanding job I think I've ever had. I was barely unemployable. Barely employable when I came to Al-Anon. And just as a reference point, I had 20 jobs my first 18 years out of high school. And most of them are probably still operating, doing it wrong. So I was barely employable for a number of years. Today, I have a very, very demanding job. I am self-supporting. I show up at that job, and I'm part of the solution. I'm part of the solution there. And that is only through the tools that I've gotten from these 12 steps that came directly from Alcoholics Anonymous through Al-Anon here. I do service work. I just finished up a stint on a second stint on our North Carolina Bermuda Convention Committee. I have served at the group level, the district level, and the area level. And I don't know what my next job is. Honestly, I don't. I'll just have to wait and see what God has in mind, I guess. It's a kind of a continuing adventure. I still have a sponsor. I still use a sponsor. And I sponsor people. I don't know any other way to do it. Back to basics. I don't know any other way to do it. I'm not sure there is any other way to do it. I was taught that you have to give it away to keep it. This is not my favorite thing. Standing up here, bearing my soul to you all is not my favorite thing. But it's what I believe I must do if I want to stay here. And I so want to stay here. I don't have a life without you all. You all are my family of choice. I fit here. I don't fit anywhere else. I still don't fit anywhere else. And I'm okay with that. It used to bother me. It doesn't bother me today. So again, it was a tragedy that I married an alcoholic. It was just a tragedy. But that has been my miracle. That's been my miracle. The way I know today that I'm doing what I need to do, that I'm where I need to be, my very worst day today, the worst day, is 300% better than my best day used to be before Al-Anon. And that lets me know that I'm right where I need to be, and I'm doing what I need to be doing with the people that I need to be doing it with. And I thank you for that. Thank you.